It's definitely been a while since we have done one of these videos, which is the news of the week. And for those of you probably thinking, what has happened to the news of the week? Why have I not done a news of the week for the past couple of weeks? Well, that's because I had other commitments that I had to do, and since we were getting to a time where it is really crunch time in MLS, and the fact that I'm pretty sure we weren't going to hear a lot of rumors during crunch time of the MLS regular season, and that most of the news is just going to be talking about how coaches and players are just trying to spear up their team to get ready for these last couple of weeks to battle for playoff spot. I thought it wasn't really worthy of doing a news of the week until today, where I actually do have time and that we are now heading into the playoffs. Now, most of these news I'm going to talk about isn't going to be playoff related, although there is one news that is going to be a little bit playoff related. But one thing that I want to first talk about is that MLS have revealed their finalists for the 2020 year-end awards, and when they do announce the year-end awards, I will make sure to make a video talking about the winners of this year and kind of just give my opinion whether or not if they deserved the award, and maybe some of these finalists might have got robbed in terms of not making the finalists. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that also are at this point even looking at the finalists and say, well, you know, some of these players, I know they deserve to be in the final three or the final four, but there was definitely a couple of players that got robbed in terms of not being on that final three list and a chance to win either the goalkeeper of the year, the player of the year, the MVP, or the newcomer of the year, and all those good awards. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, is that DC United has announced that they have narrowed their head coach candidate to now just 4 candidates that they have. Their main candidate, and right now their front runner, as they said, is still their interim head coach, Chet Ashton, who I thought he did a relatively decent job with DC United. I mean, I know he eventually didn't get this team into the playoffs despite they make a late push for it. I still think he definitely do a decent job, but at the same time, I will also say that, you know, is this kind of just the fact that since whenever there's a new head coach, and you usually see when a team have like a new head coach, they tends to play much harder, and there's kind of that new head coach kind of magic spell that is put to the team and make the team a little bit better, or is actually Chad Ashton actually a real deal? But other candidates include Jill Ellis, who I mentioned before how there could be a possibility where we could see a watershed moment as we will see our first ever female head coach in MLS. One name that they just recently brought up that I didn't really know a lot about is Ezra Henriksen, who actually was playing with DC United during his playing day, but he was more known for being a long-time LA Galaxy and Columbus Crew player, and he also has been coaching the reserve team for the Seattle Sounders Tacoma Defiance. So it's kind of interesting that his name kind of brought up, and that we have seen that some teams decided to maybe go to the USL to look to see if there's some hidden gems of head coaching role that can really make the jump to coach an MLS team and make them very decent. I mean, we've seen it before that there are times where you can definitely go to the lower leagues and find those hidden gems and make them the head coach of an MLS team, and they would actually do very decent for your team. And then, of course, the last candidate, which is kind of also an interesting one, is Chris Armas. And, you know, if they're even going to be thinking about bringing Chris Armas in, that will be kind of the irony in terms of this Atlantic Cup rival, and that I'm not sure that's the first time we ever see a head coach that used to coach the Red Bulls, or at least part of the Red Bulls, decided to join the enemy and go for DC United. I know, you know, one prime example of head coaches jumping the ship to coach another team right now is Dominic Kintner, and I know Dom Kintner is not the main head coach of the LA Galaxy, and he's only taking charge on an interim basis, but he's been a long time assistant coach of that team, and he was coaching with the Quakes and even played with the Quakes for a very long time. So could we see something similar to that with Chris Armas, long time playing with the Red Bulls and pretty much a Red Bulls legend, coached the team, eventually got himself fired, and now going to be the head coach of of their arch rival DC United. So that will be interesting to see what DC is going to decide it. I expect this is going to take a while, and that I don't expect them to think about naming a head coach this soon, consider the fact that we still have a couple of months before next season starts, which, by the way, speaking of next season, there's still no guarantee when are we actually going to start next season, and whether or not if we are actually going to start on time or not. Hopefully that will be the case, and we don't have, like, I think the beauty about MLS and also the MLB is that since, unlike the NHL and the NBA kind of had their season paused when they were right on the final stretch and heading to the playoffs, and that they had to pretty much play in the playoffs during the summertime, and now their season are being pushed back into December. At least I think MLS don't have to deal with that, alongside with MLB and maybe even NFL, that don't even have to deal with just pushing back their start of the season, because this pandemic didn't really cause too much havoc, other than the fact that they did either have to shorten this season to basically finish the season on time, or in this case, they kind of are going to be finishing the season on time if it wasn't for last year when MLS decided to push the season and make it a little bit shorter to push it into November. So there's definitely a long time in terms of this off season for teams to decide what to do, and I expect DC is going to take their time in terms of potentially naming who is going to be their next head coach heading into next season. Now, moving on in terms of the next news. So there isn't a lot of rumors that has happened. In fact, there's only one rumor that I can actually put here on the board, and it's none other than the crazy Inter Miami rumor. And I'm not sure should I have a specific name about these rumors with Inter Miami, because, you know, whenever you hear rumors and players that's linked with Inter Miami, it's usually probably not going to be true, and it's just something that is just trying to attract the attention of a lot of MLS fans, that maybe they'll see a big name European player coming to MLS. Well, it seemed like Inter Miami is now linked with Real Madrid defender Sergio Ramos, and even David Beckham says that he wants Sergio Ramos to play for Inter Miami. Now, for the record, Sergio Ramos had made no intent whatsoever right now that if he wants to leave Real Madrid or go to MLS, let alone maybe thinking about joining Inter Miami. But if Inter Miami is going to be thinking about getting Sergio Ramos, I mean, it's not really the worst signing, but at the same time, what I do worry about this signing is that they're going to make him a DP player. And if Inter Miami make him a DP player, this is a terrible mistake, because you never want to make your defender and spend your designated player spot on a defender. And I know Sergio Ramos is well known to be one of the best defender in the world, and also known as probably the biggest villain in terms of the sports, because of his crazy antics, which kind of just is the reason why I made him so great, with all his antics of diving and trying to take advantage of everything that seems to be kind of illegal on the soccer pitch. But you know, if he does come to MLS, he's going to be right around his late 30s, and you definitely don't... You know, defenders, usually when they get to their late 30s, that's when their legs is going to start to fall off. And although Ramos is seems to still be on his top of the game with Real Madrid, if he does decide to leave and think his top of the game is start to kind of dwindle a little bit, I just think that if Inter Miami is thinking about getting him, please, for love of their team, do not decide to sign him on a designated player contract, because that would be a huge mistake that would make. And if anything, if they're going to burn a DP spot, they might think about burning that on an attacking end, because the defense is not the biggest issue for Inter Miami this season. The real issue for them is obviously on the attacking end, where they don't really have any goal scorer, and the guy that they just bought for $7 million, that is Gonzalo Higuain, hasn't really solved their issue whatsoever in terms of not being able to put the ball into the back of the net. But yeah, moving on. SKC have picked up Gadi Kinna option and now have made him a permanent transfer, which that is not a big surprise, because Gadi Kinna has been one of the more important attacking piece for this SKC team, and that I'm kind of surprised he was left out in terms of being the finalist in terms of the newcomer of the year. And if you want to talk about a snub and someone that got robbed in terms of not being in the finalist in one of these year-end awards, Gary Kinnear is definitely one of them, with the way that he actually did not make it to the list as one of those players that is on the final list of becoming the newcomer of the year. Now, Luis Blanks will remain with the Montreal Impact as his loan is actually extended to 2021, and there was kind of an interesting thing when I read the article talk about his loan is going to be extended to 2021, of how they said that they're happy the fact that he's going to be with Montreal and he's going to be kind of a long-term future for us. Yeah, you realize that you basically just extended his loan to 2021 and that he's still going to be going to Serie A and going to Bologna most likely at the end of 2021, and they already kind of had an agreement, the fact that, you know, once his loan does expire, they are going to send him to Serie A and send him to Bologna. So to say that this is kind of he's a long-term future of this team, yeah, I don't think that's kind of accurate to say. But that being said, this is kind of good for Montreal, knowing the fact that Luis Blanks has done very well in his first season with Montreal, and that looks like the reason why he wants to extend his loan another year is that you want to get another year of experience here in MLS before making that jump to go back to Europe to play in Serie A with Bologna. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, some good news for Philadelphia Union fans. Jim Curtin says that Andre Blake could be ready for the playoffs, and the reason why this is great news is because that's been one of the big question mark for the Union coming into the playoffs. Where is Andre Blake actually going to be healthy enough that he can be ready for the playoffs? And if he is, then that does give a huge boost in terms of the Union potentially going deep in the playoffs. I mean, as much as I know the Union definitely does have a decent squad, that they should still be able to get at least maybe one round in the playoffs without Andre Blake, if they are going to be MLS Cup contender, and once they do go deeper into the playoffs and play against some of the toughest team in the Eastern Conference, they need Andre Blake as their goalkeeper and need him to pull off what he has done during this season, which he has just single-handedly, a couple of games, just steal all 3 points for the Union and kept them in some games during this season. But moving on, in terms of the next news, and it's time to kind of do a little mini kind of award ceremony in this news of the week. So you know how I talked about how the MLS have revealed their finalists for 2020 year-end awards, and eventually they're going to make an award ceremony out of that. Well, the award ceremony of the news of the week is pretty much announcing who is the player of the week and the player of the month, and also who, of course, won the Golden Boots this year. For player of the week, it is actually going to be Kevin Molino, the one that's going to win that award, which I was kind of a little bit surprising, because I think in that game against FC Dallas, in my opinion, the man of the match isn't really Kevin Molino. And even on the Minnesota United Twitter page said that they didn't award the man of the match to Kevin Molino, and it was actually Reynoso, the one that, of course, won the man of the match. So this might be the first time, or one of the rare times, that the player of the week in MLS did not actually win the man of the match. And there's no doubt that Reynoso in that game against Dallas was so much better than what Molino was. I mean, Molino was great with him scoring those 2 goals, but it was Reynoso, the one that created those goals and also scored or won himself in that one. So in my opinion, he probably should have deserved the player of the week. If you're going to award with a Loons player, that of course deserved to be player of the week after that performance against Dallas. But still, congratulations to Molina, of course, winning the player of the week. Now, for player of the month goes to Tati Castellanos, who not surprising that he, of course, won player of the month, knowing the fact that he only become the second player in the New York Derby to score a hat-trick in that game, as he done that part of that 5-2 victory that NYCFC had against the Red Bulls. And congratulations to Diego Rossi of winning the Golden Boot and become, for the second year in a row, that an LAFC player, of course, won that award with 14 goals. And, you know, I know 14 goals is probably the amount of goals in MLS history for a player to win the Golden Boot. But you got to remember, this is a shortened season. This is no doubt the shortest season we have ever had in league history. So yeah, 14 goals in 25 games. While the goals and games ratio was definitely lower than what Carlos Vela did last year. I mean, what Carlos Vela did last year, winning the Golden Boot with 34 goals in 34 games, is going to be really hard to replicate. But still, you know, if you do the math in terms of how many goals could Rossi still get if we do play a full season, I think he could still get maybe 6 or 7 more goals, and he could have maybe got like 20 or 25 goals this season, which, you know, for a Golden Boot winner, usually we've seen a lot of Golden Boot winner usually get like 20 goals and 25 goals a season, with a rarity where some of them might be close, pushing the original line that we thought was unbreakable, which is 27 goals a season. Now, moving on in terms of kind of that mini award ceremonies from the news of the week, to talk about Austin FC have decided that they will unveil their jersey heading into next Wednesday, and they did a little bit teaser yesterday talking about the jerseys, and when I watched the teaser, I can't really tell exactly how the jersey is actually look, and I haven't even looked at any leaks image of how their jersey is going to look, but it's going to be interesting. I'm kind of very excited to see how it's going to look, especially the fact that, you know, I always love a jersey that has that green color, and knowing the fact that Austin FC is a team that has green as part of their team color, I'll be interested to see how they're going to use that kind of green color, and that I know Timbers and Sounders fans are really hoping that Austin FC is not trying to copy what they're doing with the green color that they use for their jersey. Although the green for Austin FC, I think that one is kind of a dark green color that is darker than the one that the Timbers wear, and it's definitely darker than the rave green that the Seattle Sounders wear for their home jersey. And then finally, in terms of the last news of the news of the week, Orlando is going to set to host the final stage of the CONCACAF Champions League at Explorers Stadium in December, and they actually released the schedule in terms of how the final stage is going to work, and it's going to be something similar to how the Champions League back in June, and also, well, not back in June, but more like in July and August would win, where pretty much for the rest of the game it's just going to be single elimination game, although there's going to be some quarterfinal game that's going to finish their second leg game, with one of the game between LAFC versus Cruz Azul is just going to be a single elimination game, and then the semifinal is going to be a single elimination game alongside with the final. Now, what's interesting about the schedule is that if you thought the playoff schedule in MLS is very quick and fast and it goes like boom, 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 you haven't seen the CONCACAF Champions League schedule of how they're going to be playing their game in Orlando. Like, they literally are going to start playing in December 15 and 16 to finish the quarterfinal, which I know this is an unlikely sequence, but can you imagine if one of these 4 remaining MLS team that isn't in the quarterfinal right now, well, actually 5 MLS team that is in the remaining quarterfinal, and they basically one of them are going to be MLS Cup champion. And MLS Cup is actually going to be taking place just 3 days prior to these quarterfinal game is going to take place, and that would be kind of awkward, the fact that you just won an MLS Cup, and usually that means the season is done, and then literally 3 days later you have to basically get ready again to play another important game in the CONCACAF Champions League and play in the playoffs. I mean, it's almost like you won a playoff in your league, and now all of a sudden you got another playoff that you have to deal with. So that's going to be kind of awkward, and I'm not quite sure how that situation will work. But again, it is going to be very rare that, you know, obviously we do know that there is one team out of those 5 remaining team in the quarterfinal of that in the CONCACAF Champions League, that is MLS team that is not going to be participate in the playoffs. But it'll be interesting to see if that scenario does come, and talk about how the CCL is just going to be kind of boom, 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 and boom. The final is actually going to be taking place on December 22nd, and they're literally just going to play all 3 stages in a span of 8 days, which means that there's not going to be a lot of rest between all these kind of game. And you know, the only good thing I will say is that at least since this is going to be taking place in Orlando, it's not going to be like what happened in the MLS's back tournament. Like what happened in the MLS's back tournament was really just a battle of nutrition, with each of these teams have to play pretty much every 3 days in a game and have to play in just 90 degrees heat and just 90% humidity. At least in December, it's going to be a lot much cooler. And while there's going to still be humidity, because you know Florida always get humidity all year around, it's not going to be as bad as what we saw in the MLS's back tournament. But that being said, the schedule is very, very tight, and I guess the reason why they decided to do that is that they don't want to have to play the final right after the Christmas break, and they want to do it right before Christmas is gonna come. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the news of the week. Again, it's been a while since I've done one of these news of the week, but in case if I didn't mention anything that has happened in this week or even in previous week, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I of course will see you guys next time.